We are so happy to have Lisa Marie Simmons with us today, acclaimed poet, songwriter, vocalist, creative, amazing person that has been doing so many cool projects, and I'm super duper excited to talk to you today. So thank you for coming on for an interview.
Well, Quentin, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm thrilled to be here and thrilled with your new initiative that you're doing. These are things that we need in the world today. It's so important.
Absolutely.
And so I'm really grateful to be a part of it.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. It's really fun to highlight all the things that are going on in jazz. And I mean, just diving into what you've been doing recently has been so fun. I mean, I found you through, I think it was one of the standards that you sung, and now I'm discovering all of this amazing NoteSpeak stuff. And so I want to talk about the NoteSpeak stuff. You're about to release your third album, I believe.
That's right.
Can you talk to where the idea of poetry specifically coming into jazz? Because a lot of jazz fans are very familiar with sung jazz, but how did you arrive at the idea of poetry specifically?
Well, I mean, it's something that's been done a lot in the 60s, really, like Gil Scott-Heron and people like that were some of our inspiration. But I had a band that was called Hippie Tendencies, and I'd send it to jazz festivals, and they'd say, "Oh, this is too pop," and then I'd send it to pop festivals. They'd say, "Oh, this is way too jazz," But through that band, I was inspired to do this piece that was from the movie. The name is escaping me right now, about Sacco e Vanzetti. I don't know if you know who they were. They were Italian immigrants to America, and they were put to death for a crime that they didn't commit. And there was a film made about this, and Joan Baez wrote the soundtrack for it.
Wow. Okay.
And there are two songs that are really famous. One of them is "Here's to You," "Here's to you, Nicola and Maud," and so she created these by getting letters that Vanzetti had sent back to Italy to his father, telling him about what had happened and expressing, just the terror that he wouldn't be able to see his family again, but also just sort of accepting of his fate. Just like these really intense, beautiful letters.
Wow.
And so she used those as inspiration for the lyrics. And so what I did when I was with Hippie Tendencies is I thought, I'm going to recite these letters rather than... And it ended up being, so that's how we sort of started. We put together two of those songs that she had written, and I, rather than singing them, I recited them. And it was really, audiences really responded to it. I used it because I wanted to talk about immigration. Here in Italy, it's a big issue as well. And I just wanted to remind people, this is, you too were immigrants, and this is what happened,
Wow.
So that's kind of how we started going in that direction. That's how it started.
And that's fascinating. I feel like when you have words that are spoken, at least me, I pay attention to the words more, because sometimes when lyrics are sung, sometimes I'm not even aware of what the lyrics are. I'm just listening to the tunefulness, and sometimes it gets on my wife's nerve because she's so tuned into lyrics, and she'll be like, "Isn't that song beautiful?" I'm like, "I have no idea what it was about. I was
Your
just
wife
listening."
and I'll get along. Tell her I'm with her. Yes, I'm all about the lyric.
Yeah. Well, So I feel like with poetry, it adds extra weightiness to the words.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think it also depends on interpretation. What we're giving it, and I think that's true in it sung as well. I think that interpretation really helps a lot to have those words stand out, or have that message, whatever it is that you're trying to get across, stand out. I think the other reason that I'm sort of theatrical on stage is I've lived in Europe for many, many years now. I lived in France for a while, and I was in Holland and Amsterdam for a while, and in South America. And so being in countries where people are not their mother tongue English means that I do speak Italian and I do speak French, but it means that I use my body and my voice a lot to communicate the subtext,
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah.
and so that also I think is why this new project NoteSpeak is really good for me because it's already a direction that I've sort of been going for a long time.
Awesome. Well, and of course too, like I get the musical selections for the accompaniment will also augment the words. So what
So
is that
Marco,
process? Oh,
yeah,
pardon. Sorry.
that's a good question. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. I
Oh
just
no, you're fine. Just yeah, curious about kind of then the musical accompaniment side. I mean, I was listening to the first one.
which is
I
NoteSpeak
mean, I don't want
uploading.
to assume too much, but it felt like it had more of like an electronica vibe, and the second one had a lot like more of like an acoustic jazz vibe. So, like, where did these ideas come from for the poems and stuff? Like, do you write the music yourself? Do you collaborate? Like, how does it happen?
Oh, that's such a good question. Marco and I, he's my partner in music and in everything else, and he and I were the founders of Hippie Tendencies, and with
Mm.
him we created this new project, NoteSpeak. And as far as the writing process is concerned, yeah, you're right. The first one, so the new album has elements of both the first two, but
Mm.
the second one was heavy on dodecaphony, like the 12 tone scale,
Mm.
which I
Hmm.
don't know if listeners know about it, but it basically consists of like the 12 tones of the chromatic scale that each have equal weight.
Hmm.
So there's no major or minor keys. There's no dominant.
Mm. Hmm.
And then the theme needs to contain all 12 tones and never repeat them.
So, like
So
a
it's very
Schoenberg kind of
challenging.
approach,
Sorry.
like a Schoenberg kind
Yes,
of serial.
exactly.
Yeah.
So we married that. This is from the second album, Note Speak 12.
Mm.
The concept was I was like, I want to talk about unity. We had the first one had come out, and then we went on tour in Europe. We went to India. It was going really well. We had a U.S. tour planned, and then COVID hit, and so we're like, gosh darn it! And then so we decided to write another one. And while in the process of doing that, I said, I really want to talk about unity. And Marco
Mm.
said, I'm thinking about this. I've been messing around with
Mm.
this 12 tone scale, and that's like it came from Austria, like you were just
Hmm. Hmm.
saying. And he said, let's like get the farthest things apart that we can get. So we took dodecaphony and married it to Afrobeat, and
Mm.
tried to put
Hmm.
those two things together. And then within that concept, I was like, okay, let me meditate on 12. What is 12?
Mm.
What is 12? And I started doing a lot of research about because it's so ubiquitous. It's everywhere in our
Yeah.
lives,
Yeah.
right? 12
Yeah.
jurors. It's a lot goes back to sort of biblical
Yeah. 12
or
Tribes of
religious
Israel.
things, but it's also in mathematics, and it's fascinating.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I based a lot of the poetry. I did
Mm.
a lot of 12 line poetry or
Mm.
adapted some traditional forms so they were 12 lines, or so we just played with that a lot.
Yeah.
And it's a back and forth between Marco and I. Sometimes I come up with a melody on my, and with my skills that are nowhere near his, and then I pass it to him, and I can no longer play it because he takes it to a different place. But yeah, so sometimes it's my melodic idea, and sometimes he has an idea of something that we ought to be talking about. So
Mm.
you know what I mean? We both
Yeah.
participate in both things, and we very, very much do not want it to be poetry with music underneath it. We
Mm.
write them
Hmm.
together. So that,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you've noticed as you've listened, but it's very carefully constructed,
Yeah.
while at the same time it's jazz. So
Hmm.
we're leaving space for all of the musicians to bring what they bring, and it's alive.
Mm. Hmm.
We got a gig on Sunday with this the new album, and we want to have a structure for the musicians, but we also want to give them the space to be able to improvise,
Right.
So when we're performing live, it's never the same twice, and that goes for the poems as well. I don't write on the fly. I'm like
Mm.
very structured about my
Yeah.
poetry, and I
Yeah.
really lots of research and
Yeah.
a lot of depth to them, and I like to write in layers so that
Mm.
you
Hmm.
get something new each time, right? But maybe the way that I'm going to interpret it, or it's going to depend on the night, just the same way it is with musicians. And I'm going to give them space to play and interweave with them. And so we've been together for a while now, and we're able to do that.
And that's, I was going to ask about that. Like, if you're singing like a standard, yes, you can like lay back on the beat or maybe stretch out a phrase or something. But for the most part, the melody is fixed to the harmony. So I was going to ask, like, with the poetry, do you have like landmarks? Like, I need to get to this stanza by this part of the tune?
Yes.
Like, how does that work?
Yes, that's exactly it. That we construct them just like a song. So and that has room though when we're live, but everybody knows like this phrase means that we're going to be going to this part of this, we're going to the B now, to the C, because we've heard that phrase, right?
Very cool.
Yeah.
I love that, like, reverse engineering, getting to see the intricacy. And that brings me back, because I do want to talk about that 12-tone stuff, because I think as far as people that are musicians, probably the first and maybe only time they learn about 12-tone and serialism is in college. Like, you have your obligatory sophomore college class, and you do like 4 weeks of 12-tone music, and most people don't like it. I was a big fan, because I that stuff is so fascinating to me, but a lot of people thought that it was inaccessible or didn't sound good. But I love how your album, it still is super accessible, and it sounds really good, and it blends with the more, like, I guess, traditional sounds that people might expect, whether it's the saxophones kind of having maybe a bebop phraseology or something. But I want to like go into a music theory class in college and be like, look, this is serialism, or this is 12-tone music that is compelling. So I just applaud you on that, because
Thank you so much for saying that, because that was something that we really wanted to do. We really wanted it to be accessible. We had an artist residency, Marco and I, at SUNY Oneonta last year, and talked about this with the students. And Marco, it's funny, he's Italian, and he is like, don't leave me alone in the room with them. I don't know if my English is good enough. He did a great job, and he enchanted the students, and they were all like, can we write one right now? Can we just go to the piano and write this down? Because that's the beautiful thing about music, is it's infinite, and why put ourselves into boxes, or try to conform to some rigid, stiff idea.
That's fantastic, and I love the education standpoint too, because it's showing people that they can do it themselves too. I mean,
it's like language. Language is continually evolving and growing and moving and changing, and that's sort of the subject of the next album, which will have some elements of dodecaphony. It'll have some of the more standard jazz elements that you were talking about that we use as well. But we're adding Afrofuturism now into the new one, into the mix. I think that the new album is going to be called NoteSpeak in a Word. And it is, I don't think I sent you the one sheet. I should have.
I do have it. I believe I do.
Did I see you?
On my other monitor.
I kind of know what it's about. But I just lost you because I was pulling up the one sheet.
Oh, no.
With this new one, we have a lot of guests on it, and we're going more of a direction of song, like traditional, sort of more traditional songs. We've got a lot of people singing, like interweaving that with the poetry.
Oh, cool!
Because you just want to keep evolving, and as I said, since this is about language, I really wanted to have the musical language in all of its forms as well. So a lot more singing than we're on the two albums. Although there's some singing on those as well, but I think there's a more heavy emphasis on that this time.
Very cool. So you have guest artists singing as well as yourself singing
and so we've got I shouldn't say names yet.
You don't do it.
I won't
Keep
do
it a
it.
secret.
I'm tempted because there's some really good ones, but we've got an incredible saxophone player who's going to be guesting with us. We have a great, I can say his name, Henry Spencer, the trumpet player from England. We've got a couple singers who are so good, and I can't say their names yet. So let's see, what else do we have? We have a flute player. So we have both singers as well as guest instrumentalists.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
When is that coming out? Just so we can kind of keep an eye out.
So we're going into the studio in April and shooting for a late August release. We will see if that is going to be able to happen.
That's a timeline.
A lot of moving parts. There's a lot of people from all over the world. The last album we had 16 musicians on the album, but they were almost all Italian. A couple of guests from out of town, but most of the people were here. So now we have people from England. We have people from America. We have a guy from Switzerland. So there's a lot of stuff that we have to put together, but that's the hope, is that we get it out for late summer.
That's so cool.
I'll be on Rope-A-Dope again.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. I'll keep an eye out. That's awesome. I do want to make sure I talk about some of your influences. We've already talked about a bunch of the kind of genre styles that are feeding into this. Like there's hip hop, there's traditional jazz, electronica. What are some of the influences? And I know this is a huge question, so maybe we should start with influences maybe outside of jazz and then kind of work in, or maybe start jazz influences and work out. But I want to know where Lisa Marie Simmons gets all of these cool ideas that come out in your work.
Oh gosh. So both Marco and I feel like the music that we make, or that any musician makes, is like sort of the sum of what you've studied and gravitated towards and loved. So I grew up, I was adopted, and my adoptive father's father was a jazz drummer. And he had he traveled around, and then when he was in his older age, he put together a bar called Downbeat that he would play in every night. So I often went there. So I had this, and that whole part of the family was very into jazz. And I fell in love with Billie Holiday and Ella Fitzgerald, both. But I really identified with the deep sorrow of Billie's voice and like how she communicated that.
Yeah.
And a lesson, I think, also from her and from other artists is about taking your personal pain and not doing harm with it, though, and just having it be something that people can relate to, because you can vomit out pain to no good end. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
There's a way of communicating deep-seated trauma or pain in a way that is healing for other people rather than a negativity, right? Yeah. So there's that. And then on my adoptive mother's side, she was way into singer-songwriters. So Joni Mitchell, James Taylor, all of the 1970s, 80s sort of singer-songwriters. And I gravitated towards that because I love words. I love the lyrics, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Bob Dylan also, and then moving forward, to sort of more modern day musicians. But yeah, I guess I gravitate to people who are lyric heavy a lot of the time. I don't know.
Great, yeah.
There's so many. Like I don't even know where to start.
But I love that. It's. I think with the Billie Holiday and the singer-songwriter, I mean, it speaks so much to connecting with people's emotion, and I think that's something. Like, so I primarily play instrumental jazz, and I fall into, I think, a lot of pitfalls that other musicians that exclusively play instrumental jazz fall into, which is like appealing too much to either showing off chops or too much to intellectualism.
Look at how many notes I can put in this phrase.
Yeah, exactly. Like, man, I'm going to do this cool Coltrane thing over this normal 2/5, and look at me. And sometimes I've like I'm not a good singer myself. The most I do is sing at church, but that my voice is hidden among
The
everybody
choir.
else. But I've sometimes lamented, like, man, I wish I could have a singer, because there is like emotion that can be so clearly conveyed with lyrics. And not saying that emotion can't be conveyed with instrumental music, but I think there is something special about lyrical music and lyrics, and also kind of avoiding the just show-offiness. And I know we mentioned Ella, but I think Ella's was just brilliant, and she wasn't doing it to show off. She was just this joyful person that all of these notes just erupted out of her. So
Yeah. Yes, that's so true. I think that's so true. It's interesting because the younger guys in the band, Manuel Caliumi on drums, and the brilliant, well, they're both brilliant, but also the brilliant Manuel Caliumi on sax. They both primarily, before this group, played in instrumental groups. And there's an interview, I'll send it to you, where they talk about that, and they had the same sort of idea that you did. They really love the concept of the stuff that we talk about. It's all, I don't want to say it's political, but it's we're reflecting on what we see in the world, or I am, and lyrically, that translates also to them, and they love it. They say it gives them sort of another approach to the music, having that sort of signpost, or what I mean? Even though you write a song, an instrumental song, and you give it a title, you have something in mind for sure, but having the lyric somehow, I think solidifies a concept that you might be wanting to speak about. And then the other thing is that they're not all just like songs about the world and what's happening in the world today, but there's some personal ones too. And a lot of the writing that I do, whether it's like essays or, because I've done a lot of those as well, I tend to take a micro to macro approach, right? I use stuff that's happened in my own life to talk about a bigger issue, because I think it communicates, it makes it more personal, perhaps, and hopefully it communicates. I'm very much intrigued by the idea of storytelling being a catalyst for empathy.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I feel like that kind of empathy, and like it crosses those tensions that are that are so prevalent in our society. And I mean, we're people are very quick to bark insults across different areas, but then as soon as you realize, oh man, that's a person, or in that person, they might be going through something really hard, and suddenly you forget that there's this all political thing, and you're just seeing them as another human being. So
my gosh, Quentin, that is exactly it.
Yeah,
that is exactly it. What my whole raison d'être, the reason that I do this, is really to try to get away from that polarization, those trigger words that people just are at each other's throats, and try to come to this, realization that we're all family. And it sounds so corny, and so silly, but I so profoundly and deeply believe that we are all connected, and that what hurts me hurts you, and what hurts you hurts me,
Absolutely. That's excellent. I want to touch also on a little bit more on that Billie Holiday, Ella kind of history of jazz, because you do still sometimes, I believe, record traditional jazz. So how does that kind of live in your space as a vocalist when you do traditional standards or traditional gigs? Do you do it kind of in like reverence to an earlier style, or a way of preserving jazz history, or just you're interested and you want to mix in some Billie Holiday? So or like, how does that area of jazz exist in your musical world?
What a great question. All of the above. Like, you know what I mean? I
Yeah,
love
yeah.
the idea of forwarding the tradition. I'll admit to imposter syndrome as far as my singing
Don't we
goes.
all?
Don't we all?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So especially when you listen to the greats, and
hmm
you're like, oh my God, why am I even attempting to do this
yeah.
song? But I just love the genre, and
Hmm.
and it's funny because before I met Marco, I never considered myself a jazz singer. I always just thought of myself as a singer songwriter.
Oh, okay.
Um, and then he was like, "But you like all of
Mm,
the way that you write and what your choices
hmm.
are jazz, So
Yeah.
I guess I can call myself a jazz singer now. But that album that you're talking about, the last one of standards that we did is Lisa Meets Gianni, and
Right.
we had been playing with this guy. His name is Gianni Cazzola. He's now like 89 or something. But when I met him, he was in his 80s, and he was
Oh,
one
wow.
of the only drummers here in Italy to have played with Billie Holiday. And
Whoa.
yeah, I know. And he has great stories, and he played with Chet Baker. He has stories about throwing cigarettes to Chet Baker when he was in jail over the wall, and like just this great. So he had a gig not far from us,
Yeah.
and something happened with the singer, and so we stepped in
Mm,
and did this show, and we'd never played anything before together.
hmm.
Just did a bunch of, he's way into swing, and so that was what it was
Hmm.
all about.
Yeah.
Um, and it was one of those magical performances. It was
Oh, yeah.
outside on the lake. They laid
Mm.
out candles all around. People sat on the ground,
Oh, wow.
and it was just this magical, magical moment. And he said, "We have got to record something together."
Nice.
So yes, that too. Right after the pandemic, we were as soon as we could get into a studio, we actually did that all in a room here in our home studio, all
Oh,
together,
wow. That's
like it
awesome.
used to be done.
Ah, that's that is so that one that's so cool, and two, I love that just that idea. It kind of goes back to what you're saying about language and music as a language. Like, and you find someone that you can speak with. You don't need to rehearse forever. Like,
Yeah.
you just find that person. So that's amazing. And I love that you recorded live, like in a room. Like that's all you need. Like, there's a famous picture of the Dave Brubeck Quartet when they recorded Time Out, and they're in a big Columbia studio, but they're not separated in booths. They're not tracking. They're just
Right.
like all there, and the drums has like a microphone hanging from the ceiling, and there's like, yeah, each one person gets like a microphone. I love it. It's like it's all you need
Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah, that's all you really need. I mean, if you're trying to, and we did want to sort of pay homage to that, and
Hmm.
then because Gianni is sort of this mythic
Yeah,
Italian drummer, we wanted to record that for posterity. It's just
that's fun.
he has so much history, that he's lived through, and that
Hmm.
and that we were, as we were saying earlier, that we are the sum of everything that we've listened and
Right,
played, right? And
right.
so to have that kind of the opportunity to play with that history
Hmm.
was fantastic. It was
That's
great.
so cool. That's so cool. What a special recording. Well, let me make sure we can plug all of your awesome stuff. So you have the third NoteSpeak album being recorded and getting prepared now. It's going to be hopefully out in late summer.
We'll be
Where can?
debuting some of those songs on Sunday. I'm so
Oh,
excited. Right before we
sweet,
met, I was rehearsing right before
nice.
the interview. Yes, that'll be Sunday. Yes, so that'll be coming out at the end of August. Note Speak in a Word, the
NoteSpeak in a
third in the
word.
trilogy, and
Awesome.
then we just released a thing called Spoken Standards. I don't know if you
Okay,
saw that.
I'll have to look for that.
It's on Bandcamp. It's the only place it is on Bandcamp, and we
Okay.
are taking no money for this album. I'm going to send it to you right
Oh, wow.
now because we're going to dedicate everything to this charity that supports people in war torn countries.
Wow.
So we are
That's
doing that.
amazing.
On that album, what we did is this is during our artist residency. Oh no, I was speaking of earlier. last year, we were working on this, the concept for NoteSpeak in a Word. It was a great experience. They were wonderful. I can't say enough good things. If anybody has a chance to apply to their artist residency program, I highly recommend it. That's SUNY Oneonta. But while it was great, working on that album, but we couldn't. There was this beautiful grand piano Steinway in one of the studios, and Marco wanted to take something home with us because we're writing, but it's not going to be a part of the album, right? And so he came up with this idea of pairing some 4 tracks of Ellington. I'm just gotta remember what we did. So he took 2 Duke Ellington songs and then asked me to pair the music that he chose with some poetry that made sense to be with
and
it.
You got 2 Monk tunes, Crepuscule with Nelly and Ruby.
Yeah, that's it.
You got my 2 favorite composers right there. Boom, boom.
2 Monk and 2 Ellington. And then I just chose some poetry that I thought would work well with them. And so Langston Hughes. I originally had something from Audre Lorde, but we ended up not being able to use that because I couldn't get permission from the estate. But my first choice was Nikki Giovanni, her poem Resignation. And I contacted her. And it was the most amazing email that I've ever gotten in my life. That's
amazing.
Her, what can I say? Approbation, or just saying, yeah, you please do use it. It's available. And she also was like, wow, I just love the pairing, and she liked the idea as well. So anyway, so there's that.
That's awesome.
Out there as well.
Very cool. Well, I will be sure to include links to that with the interview. That sounds so cool. Thank you so much for spending your time talking about this. This was super enlightening. I'm super excited. I'm sure everyone else that gets to watch this and listen is going to be super inspired too. So thank you.
Oh gosh, thank you.